In September 2001, Dr. Sneha Anne Philip and her husband, Dr. Ron Lieberman, lived in an apartment in Battery Park City near the Twin Towers. You all know what happened on September 11th in New York. It was against this backdrop of catastrophe and chaos that Sneha Philip disappeared, and her personal mystery became tragically interwoven with a global tragedy. The timing of her disappearance, on the very eve of the attacks, created an almost insurmountable challenge for any conventional investigation. The immediate aftermath of 9/11 diverted all resources, catastrophically altered the physical landscape of her last known whereabouts, and the sheer scale of tragedy threatened to engulf her story entirely. Dr. Philip was a 31-year-old Indian American physician, and she was last definitively seen on the evening of September 10th, 2001. Surveillance footage from a Century 21 store near her lower Manhattan home captured her shopping. What happened to her after she left the store, and whether she returned to her apartment building that night or the following morning, remains unknown. The circumstances of Sneha Philip's disappearance are highly debated, particularly regarding the time and place of her presumed death. A key question is whether she died as a result of the September 11th attacks, possibly while helping others, or if her death occurred earlier. There are two theories: the narrative of a selfless medical professional caught in the chaos of 9/11, a hero rushing towards danger, versus the more complicated picture painted by investigators of a woman grappling with significant personal and professional struggles, whose disappearance might have been tragically coincidental to that day's horrific events. What happened to Dr. Sneha Philip? Let's look into it. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here, and we are back with another video. Before we get to today's video, let's make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please click subscribe. Please click like and share this video. Share this video with your old Little League coach. Or if you didn't play Little League, your kid's Little League coach. And if your kid doesn't play Little League or you don't have a kid, I don't know, go find some old guy that's playing baseball somewhere and share this video with him. Thanks. Sneha Anne Philip was born in Kerala, India on October 7th, 1969. She later immigrated with her family to upstate New York, settling first near Albany and then in Hopewell Junction. She was a bright and ambitious individual, and she graduated from the prestigious Johns Hopkins University in 1991 before deciding to pursue a career in medicine. I always thought it was John Hopkins. And then when I found out it was Johns Hopkins, I was like, okay, there were several John Hopkins. So when you have multiple John Hopkins, they're Johns Hopkins. But I was wrong about that, I think. She enrolled in the Chicago School of Medicine in 1995. Alongside her scientific pursuits, she possessed a creative side with an interest in painting and the arts. After medical school, Sneha took on medical internships in New York City. First at the Cabrini Medical Center and later at St. Vincent's Medical Center on Staten Island. However, her medical career had significant turbulence. Cabrini Medical Center declined to renew her contract, citing repeated tardiness and alcohol-related issues, which was effectively a dismissal. This was a serious deviation from her expected trajectory as a promising young physician and became a significant stressor. Her family offered a different perspective, claiming she was dismissed not for performance issues, but for being a whistleblower who had complained about racial and sexual bias within the institution, although the hospital later stated it had no record of such formal complaints. Following her departure from Cabrini, Sneha secured another internship at St. Vincent's Medical Center, but problems persisted. She was suspended from this position for missing a mandatory meeting with a substance abuse counselor. She was probably under a lot of stress during this period of time. When Sneha was in medical school in Chicago, she met Ron Lieberman, a fellow medical student a year behind her. They shared creative interests. He was a musician and she was an artist. And they began a relationship that resulted in a marriage in May 2000. Their wedding ceremony was reportedly a lovely affair, incorporating elements from both their Indian and Jewish cultures. Ron Lieberman has consistently been portrayed as deeply devoted to Sneha, supportive of her through professional and legal troubles, and even accompanying her to a court hearing on the morning of September 10th, 2001. Her family also maintained a positive relationship with him after her disappearance. Signs of significant strain in the marriage emerged in 2001. Reports indicate arguments between the couple, notably one alleged by police to have occurred at the courthouse on September 10th concerning her purported substance abuse and cheating, an argument Ron Lieberman later denied. A point of friction was Sneha's habit of staying out overnight without informing Ron of her whereabouts. He described this as a point in our relationship where we were trying to work out, indicating ongoing marital stress. The period leading up to Sneha's disappearance was characterized by growing personal pressures and secrets, contributing to what investigators would later term a double life. Concerns with substance abuse, particularly alcohol, were prominent and supported by her dismissal from Cabrini and suspension from St. Vincent's. There are questions about her social life. Police reports indicated that Sneha frequented lesbian bars in New York City and would sometimes leave with women she met there. Ron Lieberman acknowledged her visits to these establishments, but explained them as an effort to find safe social spaces after a disturbing incident where a male colleague allegedly groped her. He maintained that she did not have sexual relationships with the women she met, and that her drinking was a temporary coping mechanism for depression following her job loss. However, a police report claimed that Sneha's brother once discovered Sneha engaged in a sexual act with his then girlfriend. It's important to know that Sneha's brother disputes this police report. These conflicting accounts make it challenging to figure out the precise nature of her experiences and issues. Compounding these personal issues were legal troubles. The incident where she accused a fellow intern at Cabrini of groping her led to her arrest when the intern filed a counter-complaint. The prosecutor ultimately dropped the sexual abuse charge against the intern and instead charged Sneha with a misdemeanor, third-degree falsely reporting an incident. She pled not guilty to this charge on the morning of September 10, 2001, the day she disappeared. Sneha was described by those who knew her as artistic, intelligent, independent, and warm, but she was clearly someone who contained multitudes. The accumulation of these stressors, job losses, suspensions, impending court cases, substance abuse, marital tensions, suggests that she was under considerable pressure. The internal turmoil is the context for understanding the various theories that attempt to explain how or why she vanished. It's a period of significant instability and potential rebellion against her own earlier choices, making scenarios beyond the straightforward 9/11 hero narrative more plausible to investigators and observers. The last confirmed sightings of Sneha Anne Philip occurred on Monday, September 10, 2001. The day began with court. In the morning, Sneha and Ron Lieberman attended a court hearing related to the misdemeanor charge of falsely reporting an incident. She pled not guilty. A police report later claimed that a loud argument erupted between Sneha and Ron at the courthouse concerning her ongoing problems and nights out, culminating in her walking away from him. Ron Lieberman has denied that such a fight occurred, and I hope for his case it didn't. That was the last time he saw her. He's got to feel terrible if they were fighting about that. During the afternoon, between approximately 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., Sneha engaged in a 2-hour online chat with her mother. During this conversation, she mentioned a desire to visit the Windows of the World restaurant, located atop the North Tower of the World Trade Center, in the near future. A friend was planning a wedding there the following spring, and Sneha also mentioned possibly doing some shopping at the World Trade Center Mall. This conversation is often cited by those who believe she was near the World Trade Center on 9/11. However, she wasn't clear about when she was going to visit these places. At approximately 4 p.m., after signing off from the chat with her mother, Sneha left her apartment. She said that she intended to drop some clothes off at a local dry cleaners. Sometime that evening, Sneha went shopping at the Century 21 department store, which was located just steps from the World Trade Center. Using the couple's American Express card, she made several purchases totaling approximately $550. Lingerie, a dress, pantyhose, bed linens, and 3 pairs of shoes from an annex to the store. Security camera footage from the Century 21 captured Sneha browsing in the coat department. This footage is her last confirmed sighting, and it was at 7:18 p.m. She appeared to be alone. This contradicts an initial recollection from a sales clerk who, after Sneha's disappearance, told Ron Lieberman that she remembered Sneha shopping that evening accompanied by another young woman, possibly of Indian descent. However, after Ron reviewed the videotapes himself, he found no evidence of this companion. What happened after Sneha left the store is unknown. Ron Lieberman arrived home from work at around midnight to find the apartment empty. He later stated that while her absence was concerning, it was not entirely out of the ordinary, as she had occasionally stayed out late or overnight with her cousin or friends without always informing him beforehand. The items Sneha purchased at the store, the clothing, linen, and shoes, were never found in the apartment. The whereabouts of these shopping bags remain one of the most persistent questions in the case, and their absence fuels speculation about her plans for the evening. Did she intend to go somewhere else? Did she meet up with somebody? The American Express card used for purchases was the only one of her credit cards missing from the apartment. Her passport, driver's license, other credit cards, and her glasses were all left behind. The Amex card was never used again after the Century 21 transactions. Also, it's weird that she didn't have her ID on her. And I sort of wonder if back then, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, people just didn't carry their IDs on them. I never leave the house without my ID. Her purchases, lingerie, a dress, new bed linens, have questions. Were they for her and her husband, an attempt to rekindle something? Or prepare for the cousin's visit she had mentioned to Ron? Or were they for an encounter with someone else, part of the double life that police suspected? Or perhaps they were simply items she wanted. The fact that these items have never been found is a void in the timeline and suggests that she never made it back to her apartment. On the morning of September 11th, there were a few events that could possibly place Sneha in or near her apartment building. In the early hours of Tuesday, September 11th, at approximately 4 a.m., a telephone call was logged from the landline in Sneha and Ron's apartment to Ron Lieberman's cell phone. Ron, who had to be up early for work, later stated he had no distinct memory of receiving this call, but conceded that he might have briefly awakened and checked his voicemail. This call suggests that someone was present in the apartment at the time. If it was Sneha, her reasons for calling Ron's cell phone from the apartment phone and what she might have done before or after are unknown. Did she intend to speak with him? Was she checking if he was home or asleep? And the lack of recollection from Ron leaves this event shrouded in mystery. Ron Lieberman woke up at 6:30 a.m. on September 11th to prepare for a shift at Jacoby Medical Center. Sneha had still not returned home, or if she had, she was not there when he awoke and left for work. Later that day, following the horrific attacks on the World Trade Center, Ron used his medical credentials and managed to make his way back to their apartment through security. Their apartment, they had apparently left a window open in their apartment, and the apartment was covered in a thick layer of dust and debris from the collapsed towers. Inside, the only tracks visible in the dust were those of their two kittens. There were no human footprints. And this is a piece of evidence. The absence of Sneha's footprints suggests that she was not in the apartment after the collapse and the subsequent settling of the dust. This narrows the window for her potential presence there that morning, and suggests that if she did return, she left before the area was blanketed in debris. Or perhaps she never returned to the apartment at all after her shopping trip. A debated piece of evidence is security camera footage from the lobby of their apartment building, timestamped 8:43 on September 11th, 2001, which was minutes before Flight 11 struck the north tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. The grainy security footage shows a woman entering the building, waiting a short period near the elevator, and then turning around and exiting the building. The video footage is of remarkably poor quality. The woman is visible primarily in silhouette. However, her general build, hairstyle, and clothing were deemed consistent with Sneha's appearance as seen in the Century 21 surveillance tapes from the previous evening. Sneha's family members also felt that the woman in the video exhibited mannerisms similar to hers. The time frame between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. was also consistent with the time frame Sneha typically returned home after staying out for the night. However, there were inconsistencies. The woman in the lobby footage was not carrying any shopping bag. She also appeared to be unaccompanied. Ron Lieberman, after viewing the footage, was unable to definitively identify the woman as his wife. Conversely, both private investigator Ken Gallant and the lead NYPD detective on the case, Richard Stark, came to believe that the woman in the footage was indeed Sneha Philip. If the woman was Sneha, her actions are strange. Why enter the lobby and then leave without going up to the apartment? Had she forgotten something? Was she meeting someone outside? Was she perhaps checking if Ron had left for work before deciding whether or not to go upstairs? The 4 a.m. phone call and this 8:43 a.m. lobby sightings are fragments of evidence. They could support a narrative where Sneha did return to the building on the morning of September 11th, placing her directly by the World Trade Center just before the attacks. But the lack of definitive proof and meaning behind this evidence deepens the mystery. In the chaos after September 11th, the search for Sneha Anne Philip began, initially driven by her husband and a private investigator and later taken up by the NYPD. These investigations would unearth conflicting information and lead to divergent conclusions about her fate. Immediately following the attacks and the realization that Sneha was missing, Ron Lieberman began a desperate search. He posted flyers with her picture throughout the city and contacted American Express, learning about her shopping spree at Century 21 the previous evening. Feeling like the NYPD was overwhelmed by the scale of September 11th and was not giving Sneha's individual case the attention it deserved, he was quick to assume that she had perished with the thousands of other victims. Lieberman hired Ken Gallant, a former FBI agent turned private investigator. Gallant's investigation uncovered the two pieces of evidence: the 4 a.m. phone call from the couple's apartment to Ron's cell phone on September 11th, and the 8:43 a.m. security footage of the building's lobby. Galen initially explored the possibility that Sneha, because she was facing mounting personal and professional pressures, might have used the chaos of 9/11 as an opportunity to disappear and start a new life. However, this theory isn't very supported. A search of her computer's hard drive revealed no such plans, and her passport, driver's license, glasses, and all but one credit card had been left behind in the apartment. Both Lieberman and Gallant came to the conclusion that the most probable scenario was that Sneha had witnessed the attacks of the World Trade Center and, compelled by her medical training, had rushed to the site to offer assistance, dying in the subsequent collapse of the towers. The official NYPD investigation into Sneha Philip's disappearance began considerably later, once the immediate crisis of 9/11 had somewhat subsided. When detectives did begin investigating, their findings starkly contrasted with the image of a dedicated physician solely focused on her career and marriage. The police uncovered details about her recent job dismissal from the Cabrini Medical Center for tardiness and alcohol-related issues, her subsequent suspension from St. Vincent's for missing a substance abuse counseling session, the pending misdemeanor charge for falsely reporting an incident, and her alleged marital problems. The NYPD investigation highlighted her social habits, including frequenting gay and lesbian bars, sometimes known for a rough clientele, and occasionally leaving these establishments with women she had just met. Based on this information, the NYPD thought that it was equally plausible Sneha had met with foul play on the night of September 10th at the hands of someone she encountered during one of her nights out, or that she intentionally disappeared to escape her problems. The lead NYPD investigator, Detective Richard Stark, who authored the report detailing these troubling aspects of Sneha's life, later testified during legal proceedings that, in his personal opinion, Sneha had probably died in the World Trade Center attacks. He reasoned that if she had died by some other means, her body would have likely been discovered in the intervening years, as most bodies eventually are. And that's sort of fascinating about this case. There's an official report suggesting that she did not die in 9/11, and the investigator's personal belief leaning towards the fact that she did die in 9/11. The delayed start of the NYPD's investigation likely meant that crucial early windows for evidence collection related to the night of September 10th were missed, and by the time they focused on her personal life, the findings clashed with the narrative already being built by the family and the private investigator. Sneha's family, especially her husband and her brother, vehemently disputed many of the facts and almost all the conclusions presented in the NYPD's report. They contend that the police had conducted a superficial investigation, possibly fabricating some evidence, or at the very least, misinterpreting Sneha's actions and motivations. They offered alternative explanations for the behaviors highlighted by the police. They claimed her dismissal from Cabrini was not from her alcoholism, but was because she was a whistleblower who had spoken out against racial and sexual bias at the hospital. As we discussed earlier, Ron stated that Sneha frequented these bars as a comfortable, safe space to where she wouldn't face unwanted male attention. Sneha's brother denied the police account that he had found his sister in a compromising situation with his then girlfriend, stating that he had never even spoken with the detective who wrote the report. Her husband also denied the police claim that he and Sneha had a loud argument at the courthouse on September 10th. The family believed the police were unfairly extrapolating from limited and misinterpreted information, perhaps to compensate for their lack of focused attention on her case in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. They defended Sneha's character. Their narrative preserved her reputation and supported the theory that she died a heroic death. The first theory, that she died a 9/11 hero, is supported by her family and her husband, and was ultimately upheld by the New York State Appellate Court, ruling that Sneha Philip died in the World Trade Center attacks on September 11th, 2001, likely while attempting to use her medical skills to aid victims. The arguments for this are that her apartment in Battery Park City was very close to the World Trade Center. As a physician, her instinct would have been to rush towards the disaster site for help. She had spoken to her mother on September 10th about visiting Windows on the World or the World Trade Center Mall. The lobby footage on September 11th could place her leaving her building just minutes before the first plane hit. And she had left behind her passport, driver's license, and credit cards, items one would likely take if she were planning to disappear voluntarily. She never used her American Express card again after shopping on September 10th. These are why the court found it highly probable that she died at the World Trade Center. But there's no direct physical evidence, no remains that were identified, no personal effects recovered, or confirmed eyewitness testimony placing Sneha at ground zero on 9/11. The shopping bags and items that she purchased were never found in the apartment, and the woman in the lobby footage was not carrying them. There are also questions why, if she were alive and conscious during the initial stages of the attack, that she didn't try to contact her husband or family. Another theory, she was the victim of foul play unrelated to 9/11. And this theory suggests Sneha might have been murdered on the night of September 10th or in the early hours of September 11th by someone she encountered, with her disappearance masked by the subsequent 9/11 attacks. This possibility was considered by the NYPD, largely based on the findings about her lifestyle in the months leading up to the disappearance. This included her alleged alcohol and possible drug use, her habit of frequenting bars with a rough clientele, and sometimes leaving with strangers. The pending legal charge and reported marital stress could also be seen as contributing factors to a volatile personal situation. The judge who initially denied her 9/11 victim status explicitly suggested that murder by an acquaintance from her nights out was a plausible alternative. However, despite the NYPD's focus on her lifestyle, neither their investigation nor the one conducted by the private investigator uncovered any specific evidence of foul play. The detective's assertion that her body would have likely surfaced if she had been murdered and her death was unrelated to 9/11 is a good point. Another theory is a deliberate departure. This theory suggests that Sneha was overwhelmed by her personal and professional difficulties, chose to disappear and start a new life, with the September 9/11 attacks providing a unique cover. Again, she had considerable stressors in her life. A loss of her position at Cabrini, her suspension from St. Vincent's, the pending misdemeanor charges, marital tensions, alleged substance abuse. The idea that the chaos of 9/11 presented an unparalleled opportunity to vanish without a trace has been a recurring theme in some discussion of these cases. But there is a lot of evidence against her voluntary disappearance. She left behind her passport, driver's license, most of her credit cards, and glasses. There was nothing on her computer, no computer searches suggesting she was leaving, and no financial activity on any of her accounts after her purchases on September 10th. She was also apparently very close with her mother, with whom she communicated frequently. And it's been suggested she likely would not have just stopped communication with her mother. The common thread in the arguments against both the foul play and voluntary disappearance theories is the complete and utter lack of any trace of Sneha. No financial transactions, no communications, no credible sightings, and no discovery of her remains elsewhere. This silence is what consistently steers many investigators and observers back to the all-consuming event of September 11th as the most probable, albeit unproven, explanation for her vanishing. The effort to determine Sneha's legal status and to secure her place among the victims of September 11th unfolded over several years in the New York courts. In 2003, with no trace of Sneha found, Ron Lieberman petitioned the New York County Circuit Courts to have his wife officially declared a victim of the September 11th attacks. Under New York state law, such a declaration required clear and convincing evidence that the missing person was exposed to a lethal peril, which in this context meant being at or near the World Trade Center during the attacks. This legal status was required for potential benefits from the federal September 11th Victim Compensation Fund. Lieberman's position argued that Sneha's medical training and compassionate nature would have compelled her to rush to the nearby disaster site to offer aid if she were in the vicinity. Her mother testified about Sneha's online chat on September 10th, where she discussed going near the World Trade Center. And even the NYPD detective Richard Stark testified that he believed she likely died in the attacks. On June 29, 2006, Circuit Court Judge Renee Roth issued a ruling denying Lieberman's petition. Judge Roth concluded that it could not be definitively established that Sneha Philip had died on September 11, 2001. Instead, applying standard state law for missing persons, she set Sneha's legal date of death as September 10, 2004, 3 years after she was officially reported missing. Judge Roth further opined that based on the evidence of Sneha's troubled personal life, it was equally possible that she had intentionally disappeared or had been unalived by someone she had met during her nights out. Sneha's family decided to appeal. Their legal team drew comparisons to the case of Juan Lafuente, another individual whose death at the 9/11 victim had been declared based on circumstantial evidence by the circuit courts in Dutchess County. Lafuente had recently lost his job and reportedly struggled with depression. He was a volunteer fire marshal. His office was several blocks from the World Trade Center, but testimony was accepted from someone who claimed to have overheard Lafuente mention a meeting at the Twin Towers that morning. The Philip family suggested that Lafuente's petition might have received a more favorable ruling due to his wife's position as the mayor of Poughkeepsie and the case being heard outside of Manhattan. Despite the challenges, Lieberman and the Phillips family's lawyer pressed forward with the appeal. On January 31st, 2008, a 5-judge panel of the New York State Supreme Court's Appellate Division reversed Judge Roth's ruling in a 3-2 decision. The decision officially declared Sneha Anne Philip the 2,751st victim of the collapse of the Twin Towers. In July 2008, the family was formally notified by the city that Sneha's name had been added to the official list of 9/11 victims. It is now inscribed on the South Pool, panel S66, at the National September 11th Memorial. Judge David B. Sachs, writing for the appellate division majority, reasoned the simplest explanation was the most likely, that Sneha, a physician living near the World Trade Center, died trying to help victims of the attack. The clear and convincing evidence standard does not demand absolute certainty, but requires that the conclusion be highly probable. Judge Sachs found it highly probable that she died that morning and at the site, whereas only the rankest speculation leads to any other conclusion. He dismissed the claims made by the NYPD report as hearsay during the testimony. He found it unlikely that Sneha had deliberately disappeared, given the lack of any preparatory actions, like taking passport or money, and concurred with investigators that if she had died by some other means unrelated to 9/11, some evidence or her remains would have likely surfaced in the intervening years. He also noted that if Juan Lafuente could be found to have faced exposure to the attacks based on circumstantial evidence, then Sneha Philip could be as well. Judge Bernard Malone wrote a dissenting opinion, disagreeing with the ruling, arguing that the evidence did not meet the clear and convincing standard because it required too much speculation to place Sneha at or dangerously near the World Trade Center at the time of the attacks began, especially since her exact whereabouts on the night of September 10th were unknown. He distinguished Sneha's case from Lafuente's, pointing out that Lafuente had a more predictable daily routine and supposed evidence of a meeting at the World Trade Center. Given her documented professional and personal problems, Judge Malone found it equally probable that she had met some other unfortunate fate unrelated to the 9/11 attacks. The journey that was the legal case to define Sneha Philip's fate underscores the tension between the need for legal certainty and the ambiguities of her disappearance. The appellate court's decision provided a legal conclusion and a measure of solace and closure for her family. It did not, and there doesn't seem like anything could, resolve all the factual uncertainties that continue to fuel discussion and speculation about what actually happened to her. For Sneha's family and her husband, Ron Lieberman, the years since her disappearance have been marked by a search for answers and a fight for recognition. Her husband has since remarried, reportedly with the blessing of Sneha's parents, and he maintains a close relationship with them. Despite the legal declaration of Sneha Philip's death as a 9/11 victim, the lack of definitive evidence hinders true emotional closure for her family. The disappearance of Dr. Sneha Anne Philip remains one of the most haunting mysteries linked to the September 11th attacks. More than 2 decades later, despite extensive investigations and a definitive legal ruling, the full truth of her final hours is unknown, leaving behind a mess of known facts, troubling allegations, and persistent, unanswerable questions. Sneha Anne Philip is remembered in multiple ways: as a beloved daughter and wife, a dedicated doctor who aspired to heal, and an artist with a creative spirit. Her name is etched onto the National September 11th Memorial, a solemn tribute to a life presumed lost in the cataclysm. However, her story is also that of an enigmatic figure whose life and disappearance compel us to confront difficult questions about the secrets individuals may carry. Her story is a reminder of what we don't know about the people that we know, and that while there's a fundamental human desire for closure, that closure may never happen. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. Follow me on TikTok. My username is AKBruce. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you would like to make a donation to the channel, there is a super thanks button. You can click it and make a donation. Any money that gets donated to this channel will be put back into this channel to make better videos for you guys. I'm going to put the names of the people who have donated to this channel here. Thank you very much. You also support me by watching my videos, clicking like on my videos, and sharing my videos. And I really do appreciate that you watch my videos. It means a lot to me. And please remember, stay spooky.